Blessings, beloveds. Welcome back, Anastasia, Cosmic Astrologer. Today I want to talk about the Sun in Virgo and just some aspects that the Sun is going to pick up along the way. I won't expand on all the aspects. The main focus today will actually be Mars and Neptune, Sun and Neptune, which are two of the, probably more challenging aspects relative to the current paradigm. So those are the things I'm going to focus on today. There's a lot of changes happening this month in September when we enter it, which is just a day or so away. Different planets moving into different signs and so forth. Mercury will be going retrograde as well in September. We have a new moon in September in Virgo. So there's lots going on, but I'm not going to unpack all those today. Main focus is around Mars, Neptune, Sun, Neptune, and particularly because, again, relative to the current nature of events, I think these particular transits and energies are going to be quite significant. I guess I just would like to say, well, first of all, I hope you guys are doing well. Again, under very trying times in our lifetime, really, probably the most trying times I think we've ever encountered relative to this incarnation, at least. But I mean, esoterically and spiritually, there's timelines that are splitting. Okay. And so the timelines that are splitting are really evident in the human race. There is a clear division of people going this way and people going that way. There's not much gray area. You're either there or you're either there. And there's different reasons why people are on this side, and there's different reasons as to why people are on that side. And again, I'm not here to talk about that or make any judgments on that, each to their own, relative to their own consciousness, ability to understand and choose accordingly. But the timelines are splitting, are shifting. The patriarchal systems are actually, just crashing at such an intense rate, even though, again, on the surface level, it appears that the forces that have been in play for thousands of years are, attempting to take control through measures and circumstances that are not necessarily aligned with what I would consider authenticity or higher truth. I don't want to talk about too much about, the global situation. We are all aware of what is going on. We all stand in a particular space in that. But I think, again, it is important to recognize that we are all sovereign beings, and we have a goddess given right to choose how we live our life and what we choose to accept that is coming to us, not of our own free will, but is appearing to come as a force of some kind. So, I mean, this is an issue that is obviously a global situation. No one is exempt from it. And so the Sun in Virgo, I think, is really just going to magnify, again, a lot of these issues that are going on, because Virgo is a sign of health, right? Amongst many other things, of course, but it is a sign of health. So health and world service actually is, you could say, a really significant themes of the archetype of Virgo. So perhaps I'll just share my screen, bring up the chart for the moment, and we'll just walk through that and have a little look at a few different movements. So first of all, in the last week, we've had transiting Mercury has been opposite Neptune. Now, that has been a pretty significant transit collectively. And also, it would have impacted each of us on a personal level in different ways, right? That depends on, your own birth chart, where this opposition is occurring in your own birth chart, and of course, what is going on in your personal life as well. But the Mercury Neptune on a collective level, I feel, has been a pretty strong pointer towards what I would consider perhaps deliberate sort of deception with information. Okay, the strongest quote that I could find that comes from Rob Hand, the astrologer Rob Hand, about Mercury Neptune aspects is, and I love this quote, is manipulating the airwaves at other people's expense. I've said this before, so if you've listened to me before, you've heard me say that before. And that's certainly what appears to be going on relative to the information that's being dispersed 24 hours around the clock globally through different platforms and mediums and sources of information, both mainstream and alternative. And so, yeah, it's been pretty chaotic to try and discern, as a matter of fact, well, what is actually truth here. And so, like I said in previous videos, I think in the most recent one I did, it has to come back to our own self relative to critical reasoning skills and analysis and research and probing and asking the questions. We must do that, right? It's just it to me it seems insane not to do that, as a matter of fact. But anyway, I just wonder how many of you experienced Mercury Neptune on a personal level, and if you did, what that brought up for you, because that can very easily point to dialogue and conversations, whether with somebody in your personal circle or professional circle, someone you know or someone you recently met. It could be a number of different scenarios, and perhaps the dialogue or the sharing, the conversation could have had quite an idealistic sort of outlook. Neptune is such a it's a transpersonal, transcendental energy, right? So it carries with it the inherent desire to want the absolute, blissful, beautiful, ecstatic kind of ecstasy experience. It's the ideal. It's what would the ideal scenario be in whatever situation we're talking about when we're pointing Neptune onto it. And of course, the problem with that is that the expectations that come along with an ideal situation is the subsequent often disappointment that comes with that, because it's like when Neptune touches something, it injects this sort of ecstasy type of blissful experience, if you like, because the imagination is triggered to such an extreme where it tunes into what would be, the absolute ultimate ideal and beautiful and peaceful and so on and so forth. And when you drop that against the external reality, and then when you drop it further into your own actual realistic circumstances, it often cannot match up, because the ideal is the ideal. It's not the practical reality of a situation. So that's one level of it. And of course, there can be a level of feeling that information you were given was incorrect or misleading, misguiding, or even straight out deceptive. So that's a really core characteristic of a Mercury Neptune aspect. Not an easy transit at all. And I think I did say a little while ago, as we were leading up to this point, that, you know, if you're in a situation where you had to make some pretty important decisions relative to contractual agreements, verbal and or written, it's not the wisest time to do that. So there is that aspect to it as well. And then on the collective level, there's the flood of information that has been coming through that is there is a lot of deliberate deception there, you know, relative to the global situation. So as we proceed forward, what's happening is that transiting Mars now is approaching transiting Neptune. And so this will really be exact, I think. Where is it? Well, it's within range now. As you can see, Mars is at 19 degrees of Virgo and Neptune's 22. So we are in this energy right now. It's been building the last day or so, as a matter of fact. And by I think it's by tomorrow, really, and then a couple of days post tomorrow, this energy will still be active. And so these two planets would have to be, in terms of the combination of the two, at an everyday personality level, would have to be one of the most difficult energies, actually. Mars, you know, represents, it's a masculine energy that corresponds to our desires and goals and ego forces as well. And it's very self-orientated, of course. It's about, you know, what I want to create, what I want to do. It is also very important from the point of view of helping us defend and protect ourselves as well. It's, you know, it's the god of war. It's a warrior type of energy. Now, at best, of course, you know, Mars Neptune is the spiritual warrior, you know, fighting for a cause that is not about oneself, but is actually about a unified, a collective unified cause, right? That serves humanity. That's the ideal scenario or manifestation of a Mars Neptune aspect. And esoterically, Mars Neptune are the rulers of what's called ray number 6. And so ray number 6 is devotion and idealism. And so at a unconscious personality level, the Mars Neptune is the martyr, the victim, the fighting a cause and being perhaps totally blindsided by the bigger picture, because Mars Neptune and ray number 6 points to a one focused direction. It doesn't have the ability to see anything else. It's just very focused on that one pointed direction. And that can go either way. That can serve in a very powerful way spiritually, but at a more unconscious and personality level, it can also serve as being just totally blindsided to everything else around it, right? So it's kind of a one-pointed focus to the exclusion of everything else. And so whether that ends up being beneficial or not depends on what that one-pointed focus is, right? And it's a very strong signature in you know, fanatical sort of groups corresponding to war, actually, and violence. It's just what seems to show up with Mars Neptune ray number 6 relative to world collective events and communities and so forth. So it can be a very dangerous type of frequency that's activated on the earth plane, because it depends on, you know, how humanity or groups of people or communities are actually working with the energy. What's the intention and the purpose behind it? The ultimate intention is to serve the divine. That's what it is. It's, you know, and Mars is in Virgo, of course, and Virgo is the sign of service. The sign of service for, you know, for humanity, not for oneself. When it comes to oneself relative to Virgo, it's really about the being able to connect to a sense of humility, which means stepping off our sort of sense of self-importance and who we think we are on that Leo type of level, at a personality level, right? Leo at the core is the heart center, right? It is that beautiful, radiant, solar heart center of truth. Opposite sign being Aquarius, which expands the bigger vision, of humanity, right? But when we reach Virgo, it's really about stepping off the pedestal of our own self-importance and actually having a look at our own shortcomings, as it were, our own flaws, whatever inadequacies and so forth. Virgo actually enables us to actually do that. And that's a very important process in evolution and development, right? Because no one is perfect, no one is born perfect. And so we are constantly trying to improve and grow and develop. And this is where Virgo becomes super important. There's so many layers to Virgo. It is one of the most complex signs in the zodiac, as I always say, because it truly is. It's an earth sign. It's ruled by Mercury at the exoteric level. It's ruled by the moon at the esoteric level. It's a mutable sign. It's yin, feminine. So the fact that it's ruled by Mercury on the exoteric level and it is a feminine yin sign, what that points to is that Virgo is actually the archetype that takes us within. It doesn't push us out there. That's Leo. That enables us to project a sense of self and identity and self-actualization. But Virgo sort of flips that whole image around, if you like, and causes us to go within and actually analyze and process and assess and critically assess and work out what else we need to kind of do, and also what is our place in the world, right? So this is all Virgo type of material. It also corresponds to, as I said, health. The whole medical field is, greatly at the spotlight at the moment, clearly relative to the global situation. So with the sun moving through Virgo, we're going to see a lot more matters come to light relative to the medical field, relative to the inconsistencies, let's say, the constant changes and so forth, the new information that's coming out, lots more people speaking up and so forth, nurses and doctors speaking up. I've seen a lot of footage of a lot of different medical staff that are in extremely difficult circumstances, because they are in a situation where if they don't follow the consensus program, their jobs are on the line. And so it's taking tremendous courage, by a lot of people in the medical field to stand up and speak up. And it's not only people in the medical field, it's in pretty much every field now, right? This is just sweeping through on every single level. And there's so many complexities around that, and so many concerns, and so many stressful situations, people's livelihoods and so forth. And again, I can't, provide an answer for every single person on that. It's our own journey and how we decide to navigate our way through that. But the point is, while all this Virgo energy, and look at all the Virgo, we've got the Sun, Vulcan, Hygeia, Mars, and Mercury, of course, is about to leave Virgo. So and of course Venus, was in Virgo and so forth. So we've had a lot of matters around the global health situation really be highly emphasized. The process of self-improvement with the Sun transiting through Virgo is really crucial, actually, if we put it at the backdrop of the current storyline of what's going on, because the amount of adjustments and changes that people are finding themselves necessary to to integrate into and to make decisions and make adjustments and changes is it's at the absolute sort of maximum level, if you like, because things are just intensifying 24 hours around the clock, really. So if you think about the zodiac, the natural order of the zodiac, and so it starts with Aries. if you can imagine that we had Aries on the ascendant here, well, let me just kind of perhaps bring that to that position so you can get some visuals. Okay, so there's Aries, okay, on the ascendant of this particular chart. And so if you walk around the wheel, you can see Virgo sitting right here, right, which is, you know, the sun's approaching into that 6th house. So this is the natural order of the zodiac. So the distance between Aries to Virgo is 150 degrees, okay, and that's called an inconjunct aspect. The inconjunct aspect speaks to adjustments, leaving things behind and adjusting things in our life. So that's Virgo speaks very much to that. The other matter is that the Virgo archetype also corresponds to what's called the gibbous phase. So if you think about the full moon in the sky, okay, it starts off at the new moon, which would be at Aries. A new moon is a archetypal energy of Aries, right? A full moon is an archetypal energy of Libra. So what comes before Libra is Virgo, even relative to a full moon in terms of the phases, right? So the gibbous phase is the phase that comes just before the full moon. And so therefore a gibbous moon phase has the characteristics of the archetype of Virgo. So we can look at all these things and bring them together. So what does that tell us? It basically tells us that we are in a month particularly because of the current story that's been programmed, that's been played out. We are in a time where we are going to really have to make a lot of adjustments in terms of our personal life, work life, and so forth. And the key to that, to the gibbous phase, to the Virgo archetype, to the 150 degrees aspect, is the finding and the looking for different methods and different ways of doing things. So it's really a case of trying lots of different things and figuring out what's going to work for you and what's not going to work for you. And the word work actually corresponds to Virgo. You know, that the jobs that we do, the job that we do in life, or the job that we do on ourselves, the work that we do, it's all Virgo. So Virgo doesn't just pick one thing and just kind of sit with that and go, oh yeah, this is it. Virgo is going to choose or look at or examine a number of different things and analyze and work out how and why this works, or why this particular thing doesn't work. And so this is really a month of a lot of adjustments for ourselves, I think. It is also a month of becoming more aware of the health situation and what is actually right for us to do, what feels right for us to do, not what is told, what is coerced, what is suggested, what is mandated, but what is right for us to do. I mean, you know, bigger picture stuff, more spiritual, esoteric level, the timeline's splitting and shifting, the scales being tipped over, because the balance is just, it's not there. And so we've just, again, just to not sound repetitive, but we literally have reached a crisis point in the collective conscious and unconscious, the earth plane itself, where the scales need to tip on the other side. And that is never going to be, you know, a smooth, easy ride and process. So we are riding the biggest sort of tornadoes and waves and curveballs of our entire life. And it's just going to be a case of these sorts of things are going to continue to intensify, certainly for the rest of this year, and I believe well and truly into next year as well. And so we are going to have to put our, sort of thinking caps on, particularly while, the sun's in Virgo for the next, 3.5 weeks or so, and really work out in which ways do we need to adjust, our lifestyle and in the choices that we make. What are the things that we need to kind of bring in more of, and think more about, and find ways to integrate different sorts of methods or practices, so that we can make our life somewhat easier, if you like, with the dire straits type of circumstances. And again, I know that's not easy for anyone, but I guess we just have to find it in our own heart, in our own mind, and in our own sort of spirit and resilience, to work on the practical level, because that's what Virgo asks us to do. It asks us to do our bit, to do what we need to do on that practical level, not only for ourselves, but for the human family, for the whole entire planet. How can we be of service at this point in time in the backdrop of what is actually going on in the world, right? How can we improve things? How can we, basically, create a sense of improvement through the practical application of what we do and what we choose to do. So again, it's not an easy journey, but anyway, let's just have a look at Mars opposite Neptune again. As I said, this points to ray number 6 esoterically, and it is one of them, in my opinion, and Rob Hand agrees to this as well. Just if you need extra reassurance by another astrologer who's much more experienced than myself, he also has a recognition that, Mars Neptune is probably one of the more difficult aspects. Now, let's just unpack a few layers. I've sort of mentioned a few, but I just want to go back to it. So don't forget, Mars rules iron in the body. It rules our willpower and desire and motivation, right? The ability to get up and act on things, the ability to kind of get out of bed, if you like. It's our strength and source and willpower. And understand that Neptune is a body because of its transcendental nature, and because it fundamentally represents divinity and spirit. It's a body or a frequency or an energy that has no form and no structure and no boundaries. And so what it actually does is diffuse anything that it touches, right? It sort of dissolves it and diffuses it, disintegrates it. It washes away any of the form and boundaries around whatever it's touching. So in this case, it's Mars. And so there's a couple of things that I would like to maybe suggest, and that is that, and I've seen this in over the years, I've seen this take place in people's lives. I've read it in different material as well. Mars Neptune typically can correspond to infection, fever, different types of medical kind of situations that can be difficult to dissect and discern and understand at the time, because Neptune is, again, it's a body that doesn't belong to this 3D paradigm and reality. And when you mix Neptune with Mars, I mean, one example would be you were prescribed a medication and you took it under a Mars Neptune transit, and the adverse reactions that could take place from that could be quite severe, as a matter of fact. So look, I'm not a doctor, but I do know enough about astrology to comfortably and confidently suggest that a Mars Neptune aspect can be very tricky when it comes to mainstream medicine. Okay, I'm not talking about natural medicine necessarily, but even with that, if you were to let me use the example of ayahuasca. If you were to take a journey with ayahuasca during a Mars Neptune transit. And there are billions of experiences with that, I know, but my understanding is that you need to be really prepared for that type of journey, you know, very clean mind, clean body, and so on and so forth, because the trip can take you into a different direction that wouldn't necessarily be very comfortable, let's say. But even, you know, even with something natural like natural medicine, Neptune Mars is a very tricky energy. It's not an ideal time to be messing around with drugs or medication or even natural medicine, unless you feel, I suppose, that you are at the optimum sort of clean state and level, you know, within, right? But outside of the medical type stuff, again, like I said, it could correspond to infection and fever are two very common things with Mars Neptune. If it's not any of those things, it can also correspond to a sense of our own will forces, and feeling a sense of defeat is a typical manifestation of Mars Neptune. It's like you put it up against the backdrop of what's going on, there can be a sense of feeling defeated and subsequently depleted through the frustration and anger of certain things that are going on, perhaps, let's say, and it can be a very dispiriting kind of energy, okay? On the other hand, and also because it corresponds to will forces and creating that sense of feeling defeated, it also has an impact on our energy levels as well. So the Mars Neptune transit is not an ideal time to be focusing an angry Mars directed energy in a way that is just for purely selfish reasons and or just coming from a very unconscious space. Neptune always asks us to integrate with spirit, right? To integrate with divinity consciously, that is, because we are all spirit and divinity. At the end of the day, in essence, that's what we are. We are an expression of spirit and divinity, right? But being in a physical body, we have this personality and we have these physical limitations and barriers and desires and whatnot. And without consciousness and awareness, we are not consciously, let's say, integrating, you know, the spiritual forces, if you like. So we have our own kind of agenda and motivation and direction, and we want to kind of go in a particular way. But when it comes to Neptune, we can't deny the presence of Neptune. Neptune is there for a particular reason. When it comes into a particular aspect with another body, it's literally asking us to work with Neptune at the highest possible level that we can. In this case, Mars, which is transcending our own personal sort of selfish desires into something that's would be more of a unified level of asserting our energy, our willpower, our desires to an outcome that serves one and all, right? And that ultimately serves the divine spirit consciousness to all things, right? But that's not a typical way that, you know, the average person is going to work with a Mars Neptune. The other things that come up with Mars Neptune is deceptive behavior and deceptive action, manipulative behavior. So I expect on the political arena, there's going to be a lot of things that come out of this. It started with the Mercury Neptune, which in my opinion has just been a lot of lies that have come through information, Mercury. Now it's coming up to oppose Mars. So it is possibly going to be certain actions taken that come from a very deceptive position. You know, the actions are not honest, right? It's dishonesty, okay? It's as simple as that. So it's good to be aware of this, because given, you know, the backdrop of what's going on, you kind of need to know the intentions and the motivations behind everything that's being presented. We need to know. We can't just, I don't think it's wise to just blindly kind of follow whatever it is. We need to be aware, and we need to be asking questions, and we need to bring in some objectivity and bring in some bigger picture kind of abilities to perceive things as well. So the interesting thing that as we proceed forward, okay, I'll show you. If we take it to the, where is it? It's about the 9th. So, well, first of all, here is the new moon, somewhere here, okay? But I'm going to come back and do a separate video just for the new moon in Virgo, because that's a new moon. I normally do new moon and full moon videos, as you guys are aware, and then I just kind of bring in, you know, a few different parts of different aspects that are going on throughout each month, right? And so today is really about the sun in Virgo, as I said at the beginning, with Mars Neptune and Sun Neptune as well. But I just wanted to point out that there is a new moon in Virgo around the 6th, 7th of September. I'll come back to address that. But if just sticking with the Mars, Neptune and Sun, if we go to here, the 9th of September, so this little signature here, so what's happening here is this, that the midpoint, okay, of Neptune is straight across through the Sun and Mars, okay? So we start off with a Neptune opposite Mars. We have that in play for a few days at the end of August and early into September. And then by the 9th of September, as the Sun proceeds forward and Mars proceeds forward, we have Neptune forming a midpoint between the Sun and Mars. So that's just basically another version of the Neptune-Mars opposition, but this time the Sun is coming into it as well. Okay, so really the first couple of weeks, or the first, I would say this whole month is strongly colored by Neptune, Mars, Sun energies. Okay, now both the Sun and Mars have to do with that they're both masculine frequencies, if you like, archetypes. They both have to do with willpower, vital source force energy inside, what gives us the strength, the desire, the willpower, the ego forces and structures as well. All those things are connected to the Sun and Mars. It's the external energy that gets pushed out. It's how we take action towards things, right? So in Virgo, again, it's all about how can we be practically sort of considerate with everything that we are doing at the moment, and how are we adjusting what we need to adjust, and what is it that we do need to adjust and figure out in our life at the moment, at the backdrop of what's going on. Just remember that Virgo does give us that ability to really apply ourselves, you know, with lots of different practices or methods or ways of thinking about things. You know, it helps us get in there and get into a level where we can really analyze a lot of details, a lot of different bits and pieces of how we're going to do this, how is it going to connect to that, and if I do that, then how's it going to make this situation better? You know, it's Mercury ruled, right? But at a very inward, feminine, yin energy, right? Virgo, Mercury connecting to left linear brain, but it's taking us at a much deeper level than what Mercury in Gemini could ever do. Mercury in Gemini is the connector. It's basically, you know, gathering all the information, but Virgo is going through the information and it's working out what's basically non-important, non-necessary, what is important, why it's important, and how it's going to work for us. So it's a really powerful time in that way. And look, Hygeia is hanging around there, you know. Mars was there with Hygeia, and now the sun's catching up to Hygeia. Hygeia is the goddess of health in the sign of Virgo. So we've got a lot more matters to come up, okay, with this health situation. The Neptune I would say it's a caution of be careful what you believe. Be careful about the actions and intentions of certain individuals. They're not going to be necessarily coming from an honest place, unless you are talking about a person who has, integrated consciously, comes from a place of intentions that align with truth, authenticity, care, humility, concern about the world, about others, about people's well-being, right? Unless they're coming from that place, then what we're dealing with is the possibility of deceptive actions and or feeling that we've just been dudded, we've been done because we've taken on board a particular course of action that's been suggested based on believing, what's been offered. So we can't blame anybody for anything, really, in truth. And even under these circumstances, we need to empower ourselves and choose our own course, whatever that may be, right? But all I'm saying is that under a Neptune transit, it's very easy to be fooled, disillusioned, and ultimately extremely disappointed. That's on a personal level. At a collective level, it's the same sort of thing, but it's magnified, obviously. And then it starts to speak to, bigger kind of groups, if you like, or organizations and whatnot. And, a midpoint between Neptune being the midpoint of Sun, Mars, these days here, I would say, the 31st of August right through till even 3rd, 4th of September, very crucial with Mars-Neptune aspect, opposition. And then leading up is this one, the Neptune being at the midpoint. And as we continue, what's going to happen is the sun is going to come to oppose Neptune, right? So takes place here on the 14th of September, so mid-month. Of course, there's a lead up to it, a couple of days leading up to that, and then, a waning sort of period, the sun moving away, but within orb of a few days, right? So it's a similar thing. It's not as intense as Mars being opposite Neptune, because it is the sun, and the sun is different to Mars. Whilst they are both masculine forces and correspond to our will, they do have a very different way of operating and expressing. The sun is not a planet of war, for instance, whereas Mars is a planet of war archetypically. So the sun opposite Neptune, that can be that can be a totally idealistic world view of where we're at that time relative to the backdrop of what's going on, completely just blindsided and idealistic to some narrative or some storyline where we just are totally disillusioned. And so I'll give you an example. That could be leading a particular course and people following it, and then they follow it because they are told that if you do this, then you're going to get this and this and this. And with a Neptune opposite the sun, it's not going to be the case. It's just not. So it is about being very wary and very cautious and having that in mind with whatever you choose to do, right? And just waiting, for these transits to kind of blow over, because if you make decisions during these times, it is more likely that you will end up being disappointed in the outcome. And this could also speak to your own personal sort of relationships and circumstances as well. Again, with the Sun opposite Neptune, because the Sun is vitality and energy, the Neptune can also have the impact on the Sun where there's a sense of feeling dispirited again. We're feeling defeated because the external monster as it appears has pretty big teeth at the moment, and it's trying to stick its teeth into absolutely everything and everyone. And so there's this huge contrast at the moment, right? So again, it comes back to ourselves and what we choose to pay attention to, what we choose to explore ourselves. And we can use this energy at a much in a way as best as we can, depending on our personal circumstances and where we're at. But we can use this energy just for our own health, level of self-improvement, finding new ways and new methods of doing things, adjusting things, and leaving certain things behind as well. Those are the positives that we can really gain from this Virgo season, if you like, the Virgo energy. I would just say be very careful and cautious when Mars is opposite Neptune, when there's the midpoint between Neptune, Mars and Sun, which was around the 9th of September, and then when the Sun is opposite Neptune on the 14th of September. And so look, realistically, we're talking about the first 2 weeks of September. We are under the spell or under the guise of Neptune being filtered through unconscious people, hidden motivations and intentions, which ultimately leads to deception. So take that however you like and navigate your way through that as you wish. But that is the precaution that I would like to offer around that. Okay, and let me see. So what's happened here is I'm just going to go back now. So, well, I guess it's about here, isn't it? Yeah, just 10th, 11th of September, Venus ingresses into Scorpio. I'm going to come back and talk about that. That's going to be a very, very interesting transit, again, based on the backdrop of everything that's going on. And happy solar return to all you Virgos, by the way. I know a few of you who follow me are Sun in Virgo people, so happy solar return to all of you, whether it's been or it's coming. And those of you who have Venus in Scorpio will be having a Venus return, but I'll come back to talk about Venus. We've got the new moon in Virgo that's coming up. I need to come back and talk about that. Let me see. Okay. Mercury goes retrograde towards the end of the month, which will be square Pluto at the same time, which is a really interesting transit. That Mercury is going to pick up that Pluto energy. Squaring to Pluto, it's going to go retrograde. So I basically suspect that there's going to be a lot more hidden material basically blow out of the water, right? So people are going to be seriously reconsidering some movements and some things that they have been thinking about and so forth. It's going to be a very powerful time, this Mercury retrograde, but I'm going to come back and talk about that as well. There was a nice aspect between Venus and Jupiter. Before Venus leaves the sign of Libra, she forms a trine to Jupiter, which is around about, it needs to be adjusted by a few hours, but it's basically around 6th, 7th of September, around there. So as you can see, Venus is at 24 Libra, picking up trine to Jupiter in Aquarius. And I guess relative to relationships, that can be a really nice time in a relationship that you're in. It can have to do it connects to matters of finance and things like that as well. It's the two benefics. So I expect something nice to take place, even in the, the madness and the chaos of things that's going on, because the truth is that there is this chaotic paradigm that's being split at the moment, and it's going to play out. It's going to continue, and we are all just moving through it to our best capability, making choices and decisions to our best capability. And the key again is trying not to focus on it too much as well, but selecting, a certain amount of time where you may actually look into some things, investigate some things and so forth, but not necessarily living, 24/7, imprisoned by the dark narrative that's being projected, because once we do that, we're pretty much stuffed, right? We just become completely enslaved to a narrative that's not the whole picture, and that's not it's not really the truth of things either. So in other words, we can have moments, and we can have days or hours or whatever it is where we tune into other things that do bring us a sense of joy, a sense of peace, let's say, or just a sense of enjoyment as well, all right, which is Venus and Jupiter. So, for a few days there, I might come back and talk about this. I'll see. Actually, no, I won't come back and talk about this. So let me just say a few more comments here. Two benefics, Venus, Jupiter, trine each other. It's basically a flow of energy between the two planets that typically deliver things that connect us to love and joy, abundance, beauty, relationships, sharing, giving, receiving, blessings, things of that nature, right? So it's a beautiful energy. Soak that up while you can, while it's there and it's active, because we need anything at the moment to connect us, to keep us, not connect us, but to remind us that there is love, there is beauty. We can still give and receive that regardless of everything that's going on. So yeah, they're just some basic sort of thoughts around that. Okay, what else did I want to say for today? Yeah, I'll leave it there actually, because that's more or less the bulk of what I wanted to point to. The first 2 weeks, I think, yes, are going to be what I've suggested, to some extent, and the best takeaway out of all this Virgo energy is, like I said, let's all try to step into a space where we can actually use critical reasoning skills and discern for ourselves what we are looking at, what's being presented to us, what sort of adjustments and changes we will make based on what aligns with us individually, and how can that be of some kind of level of humility, so that we can serve humanity, serve God, Goddess, divine spirit, source creation, to all things, really. And even with that Mars Neptune aspect, whilst it has all that kind of those sticky points on that mundane personality level, on our own personal journey of spiritual development, it's the spiritual warrior, but I'm talking about the spiritual warrior that is integrated inside, that is devoted, because ray number 6 is devotion and idealism, and Mars and Neptune are the planets to ray number 6, devotion and idealism. So it's a sense of our own devotion with the magnificent forces of Mars, if we choose to utilize that Mars energy in that way. Mars is a very, very, very powerful planet. you know, without Mars, we wouldn't have that ability to kind of get out of bed, if you like, to direct our actions and our goals. When we feel sort of how can I put it? When we have that deep sense of courage and we are able to act on that courage, that's Mars. That's what Mars provides, that type of feeling, which, you know, gets expressed out there, right? But with Neptune, like I said, we need to integrate Neptune with the Mars and see it as, yeah, a spiritual warrior, spiritual practices, putting our personal desires into some kind of channel or field or practice that can inspire us to act through Neptune spirit, and let that be a source of inspiration for others as well. And again, we can even take that into just our own practices in the home. You know, things that we are working on could be with meditation, yoga, any and all of those things. All right, I'm going to leave it there, and I will be back with a new moon video pretty much in a couple of days' time. So lots to say about that, actually. Yeah, okay. Sending you all much love. Thanks for watching and tuning in. Again, you know, feel free to leave questions and comments and interact with each other as well. And I appreciate all of you. Who comment and you know, who offer so much love and gratitude. And you're all, to me, I see you guys as beautiful spiritual, you know, warriors and heroines, right? So it's been, the last couple of days have been a bit it's been pretty intense sitting with what's happening. Again, I'm, you know, as you guys are aware, I'm in Australia. They've just extended our lockdown yet again. And, you know, just to, yeah, I suppose say something about this. It's gotten to the extent now, which I know this is already happening in Europe. They've said here as well that, you know, if you don't have that liquid injected into your arm ×2, you will not be able to even go to have dinner in a restaurant, right? So this is where we have arrived here. And personally, I couldn't give a shit about that. That is going to a restaurant. That's, you know, that's neither here nor there to me. But just interesting to see, you know, how I've said the last couple of months that things are just going to ramp up, and they are, you know, and that's okay. That's fine. We just need to really stay aligned and really trust in that divine plan. And, you know, with Virgo Pisces, that's one other thing I forgot to mention. We are in the sort of abundance of Virgo energy with the sun in Virgo and some other planets in Virgo. But the polarity is Pisces, right? And so there's that polarity, Pisces and Virgo, would have to be one of the most complex, challenging polarities. And it certainly does bring in chaos and order. Spirit in the practical. How do we sort of align and integrate, if you like, our spiritual self into this practical paradigm with intention and purpose, and acceptance and understanding that we're not perfect and we are just continuously evolving and growing and developing? How do we bring that balance in, you know? That's really important, a really important theme. And the way Virgo does it is through trying numerous different things and working out what works, what doesn't. And not only, not at a sort of superficial level, at quite a focused, dedicated and disciplined level. discipline is ruled by Virgo. So this is a chance for us to discipline ourselves with whatever it is, we need to further integrate and develop into ourselves, and also have a sense of acceptance. Because when we don't have acceptance when it comes to Virgo, we bring in that whole masochistic and sadomasochistic components which are connected to Virgo. And so matters then of guilt come up, and a number of complex sort of themes can come up, and beating ourselves up, and all this sort of stuff, right? Which is, there's natural guilt, if you like, and then there's what's called unnatural guilt. So these are all themes. And then how do we atone for that guilt, and where does this guilt come from? And that I could do like a whole session on that, really. But these are the themes that seem to rise in our consciousness as Virgo energy is in the air, if you like. And so we need to look at those things inside of ourselves and recognize where we are at with all of that. Most of all, having a sense of compassion and acceptance, because one of the challenging things for Virgo is, because it's just so brilliant at critical thinking and critical analysis, when it doesn't integrate its polarity Pisces, it sits at one end of the spectrum, which is, it just criticizes everything. And there's no room for compassion. And Pisces is a sign of compassion. And the compassion actually we need to have towards ourselves, because we cannot give anything to anybody that we don't actually give to ourselves anyway, right? So just some extra thoughts there. Okay, I'll see you guys very soon. Much love and many blessings. Bye.